And here we are talking about how, oh, the comedies are formulaic, everybody ends up with some random heterosexual partner. And, you know, if you could talk a little bit about why you love the comedies so much, I think that might be awesome.
I guess because tragedy brings me down.
Fair enough.
And so oftentimes in tragedies, people are doing things, they're putting up walls or failing to try to work around a wall. So it's like there's an easy choice, but they don't make that choice, you know.
Oh, hello there. We didn't see you.
Welcome to Drama
With Llamas.
in Pajamas.
We are the Drama Llamas. I'm Ashley.
And I'm Athanasia, and we are classical actors who have been making art together since Uber was an adjective.
We are here with you today to help bring you into the world of classical theater. We hope to teach you how to understand mostly Shakespeare, but also other classical playwrights and genres.
Remember, no one wrote a play hoping it would bore you, so we hope to help you not only understand, but to enjoy this work as well.
So, get comfy in your pajamas.
Grab your llamas,
And let's do some drama! Hello, and welcome back to the Drama Llamas, or the Drama with Llamas in Pajamas.
We are so happy to be here during Pride Month and to have a special guest with us.
Yes, we have another guest. Yay!
I am Palila Berger, and I know Athanasia for many years, and now I know Ashley, and you're going to get to know me just a little bit.
Yes.
Yes.
Palila is a member of both the theater community and the LGBTQ community, and we'd love to hear more about how you move through those worlds and that impacts your life.
Yes.
Well, I feel a little funny being told that I'm part of the theater community, and I'll explain to you why. I feel like I just sort of have it inside me, but I lost a lot of it, and here's the scoop. When I was a little kid, I thought I would be a professional actress when I grew up. And I remember very clearly, and this gets into the LGBTQ part, I remember very clearly being in a play when I was in elementary school where I got to play a man, a legislator. And it was back in the 1700s, and you know how they used to dress back there, and the men had long hair and fancy wigs. And I remember very clearly being very proud of the fact that I was playing a male, because I felt really constrained by gender requirements that were put on people who were seen as female. And by the way, I am female. I do identify as female. I'm still female, but I'm in the continuum. So let me just get that out. But let me get back to theater. So I played this role. My mom put her big fat 1960s curlers in my hair and gave me a wonderful thing. And someday if you guys meet me, I'll show you a photograph of me sitting there being a legislator.
Amazing.
So then I was so shy though. I was so shy after that. And we moved to a new school and everything, a new play, a new state. And I remember being too afraid to not interview. What is it when you try out? Thank you. Audition. That's how far I am.
Those pesky auditions.
Right,
man.
to audition. I was insecure. I was insecure about my body and everything. So I didn't do much there in school, but I did start doing a few things in community theater. And this coincided with when I lost weight. So you can see the body issues can really keep a person unnaturally out of something that's really good for them. But anyway, I did that. Then I got into college, and I really didn't do anything main stage there with Shakespeare, except Coriolanus with a very famous actor, several very famous actors. It was very impressive. And my roles, of course, was I was walking on stage saying rutabaga, and things like that. And but it was really wonderful. But
In iambic pentameter, I'm sure.
I'm sure, yes.
Yes, it had to have been iambic pentameter.
Oh my gosh, I have to go back and look at, if there were tapes, I'd go back and see, because I might not have been iambic pentameter. Oh dear. Anyway, but I did do a little Shakespeare in the theater classes we took, but being so inhibited, it was really hard to let go. And I remember my most glorious thing, although I have no idea what play we'd been working on, we're ad-libbing off of. But I broke through. Somehow, the character was in my body. I was no longer seeing the camera, focused on me and afraid of everything. And my theater teacher just praised me out the wazoo. So I think I got the bug again, but once again, I didn't carry on after that. However, I learned that theater is always in you. Whether you enjoy going to it, or in my case, took a sidelight to become a veterinarian, so I'm in science, and I use my theater training all the time to give lectures, to teach classes, to make, being in a room with 500 people giving a lecture to scientists, you have to be able to put on some theater. And I noticed that when I had my notes, here's some notes, when I had my notes because they really limited your time, I would highlight them and indent them just like I used to do on theater scripts to get through the scientific stuff. So you take those skills with you, and I've continued to use those skills forever since, but I'm not really a theater person. Now you're going, what did you do with the gay stuff, the LGBTQ stuff? And I have to tell you that when I was growing up, I really didn't think about it. I thought so much about gender compression. I thought a lot about that. And even though I learned fairly early on, although I wasn't really aware, I didn't know what it was, but I learned I was a little bit different, just a little bit different. I really didn't think about it in Shakespeare, so when you guys started talking about it, I thought I need to get back into it. And then I realized I don't remember anything about Shakespeare, so please educate me.
Well, I remember you telling me that you had looked at some books for the about different Shakespearean themes, and saying that you didn't see LGBTQ plus representation mentioned, which is it's strange to me because it's such an important theme and important for society.
And they weren't dreadfully old books. I don't remember exactly what years, but it's not like they were from 1940 or something like that. And I was struck by the fact that I wasn't seeing, and that's probably why I gave up trying to study through them, because I went, this isn't helping me prepare to be with the drama llamas in pajamas. So it's just interesting to see how when you're in a group that has been socially excluded and maybe buried or put in the fog, you're just desperately looking for something to connect with. And if you don't find anything to connect with, you just feel worse about yourself, or you run away from it. And I think it takes some drama llamas in pajamas to show us all what really can speak to people. And I know there are a lot of people out there in the continuum who are saying, oh, I picture that all the time, but okay, thank you. Educate me. I need to learn.
Well, I was just going to say, we've always said that Shakespeare is for everybody, because there is at least one character that everybody can relate to in Shakespeare. And the reason that we wanted to celebrate Pride Month with the drama llamas in Shakespeare is because there is a lot of LGBTQ plus representation in Shakespeare. And we're really excited to share it with you all because we've been talking about it several times in several of our other videos, so you should go back and watch them all.
Oh, yes.
If you haven't already. But, refreshers are good, too.
Yes.
I'm sorry, you were going to say something.
Oh, I was just going to say, in Shakespeare's day, we go back to the time period a lot, but in Shakespeare's day, they didn't really have the language and the social structure for LGBTQ plus identities and relationships that we have today. In fact,
well, I mean, even if you go back to the 90s, you didn't know, there was transgender was not a thing that we talked about, or a word.
I didn't know the word non-binary when I was in high school figuring it out, So, but there was a flourishing, fluid community that pushed gender and sexual norms, and a lot of that was expressed through the theater. And there are characters who are overtly LGBTQ plus, and there are characters who are kind of coded LGBTQ plus that you can see yourself in especially if you're young and you're developing an identity. And as you've seen, in our Shakespeare's Women episode, which if you haven't seen it, you should go back and watch it. And as Palila said, you know, gender norms for women, you know, people assigned female at birth have been very restrictive for a very long time. Twelfth Night really smashes through
Yes.
so much of that. So, you know, we have Olivia, who is a very feminine woman, but, you know, and she's ostensibly heterosexual, but she ignores every man who pursues her until she meets Viola, who is a woman dressed as a man.
Yes, as you saw in that scene between me and Anastasia.
Yes. And Viola nails it as a man in this society, and you know, the play leads us to understand that this is because she has this relationship with her twin Sebastian, and even though scientifically now we know you can't have an identical twin of the opposite sex, they're viewed as interchangeable in this play.
Yes. Yeah, by basically everybody. They're interchangeable.
In fact, you know, hashtag spoiler alert, Olivia actually marries Sebastian and then runs into Viola as Cesario again and is like, why are you ignoring me? Didn't we get married 4 hours ago? There's also a delightful gay pirate. He swears he's not a pirate. Antonio never yet was thief or pirate, he literally says, but
he's a pirate.
He's a gay pirate. Antonio saves Sebastian from the shipwreck and loves him dearly. In fact, he's the one who uses the word unfriended.
Yes, unfriended. Yes, for the first time in history. Well, history that we know of.
I didn't know that. You're teaching me today.
Yes,
wow.
That's in one of our
incredible.
episodes.
Is it?
The Shakespeare using words you don't understand.
Yes, using words you don't understand.
I gotta write that down.
Yeah,
I'm gonna watch that right away.
He uses unfriended. Granted, it's a different meaning. Than it is now.
Oh, okay.
But that's the first time you hear the word unfriended.
Yeah, it's a pre-friend phenomenon. So Antonio says to Sebastian, I gotta stick with you in this town that you've landed in because you're unfriended here. You don't know anybody else.
You don't have any friends.
Okay, that makes
so
sense.
let me take care of you.
And he also gives him a ton of money.
Yes.
To help him out, which is like
yes, a ton of money. And Antonio fought in some skirmish against Orsino, so being in that town is really dangerous for him, but he braves it to, you know, take care of Sebastian. And, you know, the comedies shake out with everybody important getting married at the end. Antonio's kind of a minor character. I feel really bad that he, doesn't get the guy, but, you know.
Well, being that it was 1602.
Yes.
Everybody does end up with someone of the opposite sex because it was that time period and, you know, the norms.
Yeah.
I don't have that excuse, by the way, for being unmarried. Me
neither.
I live now. I'm so sorry for myself.
But so that's why it's always they end up, you know, because of the time period.
Yes.
But I mean, you can see even with Orsino, he always kind of had a thing for Viola.
Yes.
As when she was dressed as Cesario. Thinking, I was like, it's not Sebastian, Cesario. And like when Orsino finds out, it's because you were a woman the whole time. That must be why I was attracted to you.
Now it's okay.
Now it's okay that I like you. Okay.
You know,
go on.
Well, I was going to say, this is off your topic a little bit, but when you mixed up those names and stuff, that just reminded me, that's one of the things that used to drive me crazy about Shakespeare. I'd be watching a play, there'd be so many names, I couldn't keep track of who was who coming on stage, you know?
And a lot of them aren't.
It's the glory of the play.
Yeah, and a lot of them aren't typical names. You know, it's not like you have a Tiffany.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Some of them I don't even think were typical for the time period and culture that he was writing about.
Yeah, no.
And in Twelfth Night specifically, like, you're supposed to mix people up a little bit. But yeah.
Then I'm successful.
Yes, very successful. Very successful. And the reason the play is called Twelfth Night is because Twelfth Night was a holiday celebrating basically opposite day and somebody you couldn't be. So servants and their masters would switch places. You know,
Teacher and student.
Apprentice. Yeah, apprentice and student, and men and women would often switch gender roles and have opportunities to, you know, parents and children, they would have the opportunity to play these transgressive roles that they wouldn't get a chance to do otherwise. And so Shakespeare, you know, gives a tongue-in-cheek kind of commentary on this story that, you know, all of these characters are kind of playing opposite day. They're all pushing their norms. And does it work out in the end the way it's supposed to? Sure. But these people have gotten to know each other as people and not as members of a gender before they end up together, which is really cool. And as a non-binary teenager in the early 2000s, when nobody knew what non-binary was, like, Twelfth Night was a field day for me exploring my identity. I related to everybody. I wanted to play everybody.
Well, I think that's not to interrupt your story, but about Twelfth Night.
That's okay.
But I think that, like, because, you know, when I go to see Shakespeare now, the gender of the character doesn't even matter anymore. You have women playing men. You have men playing women. I mean, I saw Richard III at the Chicago Shakespeare Theater at Navy Pier, and Richard III was played by a woman. And so, you know, I mean, today's age doesn't matter. You want to play a role in Shakespeare? Go play
ahead.
it. Go ahead.
And in the time period, only men were on stage.
Yes.
So
So men were playing women.
And so there was something like kind of titillating about seeing a like 12-year-old boy playing a woman dressed as a man.
Yes.
But so, you know, Twelfth Night was really pivotal for me, and I had this fantastic English teacher when I learned Twelfth Night at 15 when I was a sophomore.
Did she have you read it out loud?
Yes.
Good.
That is good.
Not entirely in class, but we did watch the Trevor Nunn film, and so we heard it out loud, the parts that we didn't read ourselves. And I highly recommend. It's a really good adaptation of Twelfth Night. The stylization is, I think, the right vibe of romanticism for this particular play. And it has Imogen Stubbs as Viola, Helena Bonham Carter as Olivia, Ben Kingsley as Feste. Like, it's there's some heavy hitters. So I had English right before lunch, and this teacher was kind of mentoring me, and I happened to remark one day as I was on my way out of class to lunch, you know, I was enjoying Imogen Stubbs' performance as Viola, but I thought that she'd be more believable if she had a lower voice, and you know, if she could do a lower voice. And I happened to say, as teenagers do, I think I could do better here. And now, backstory: I had a massive voice change during puberty, to the point where my choir director was kidding around with me, like, holding out on us, you know. I went from lyric soprano to contralto in 3 months.
That's quick.
It was. And you know, when you're used to performing a lot and there's typecast for certain roles, it's a bit of an identity, right? And I was not the popular kid in high school. I was a nerd, and so I would try to ingratiate myself with the other girls by acting more feminine. I had a lot of girly interests. I didn't have a very girly personality. So at school, I still, except when I was singing, I still pretended that my voice was as high as it had been the year before. And so my English teacher was like, "Oh, you can lower your voice." And I'm like, "No, my voice is low, I raise it." She goes, "Really? What does your voice sound like?" And of course, I'm deer in the headlights, now I don't know what to say. So I just opened the play, and I'm looking down, I'm like, and I pulled out the Patience on a Monument monologue, where Orsino has asked Viola about this hypothetical sister she's talking about to prove that women can love as deeply as men can. And you know, she says, with a green and yellow melancholy she sat like patience on a monument, smiling at grief. I'm staring at this book. Was this not love indeed? And I just look back up at my teacher and she goes, I do not ever want to hear that fake voice in my classroom again.
Oh.
And I was like, good for her. Okie dokie.
Yeah. Well done.
Noted.
Noted. So
did you get more popular?
No.
Oh.
But you know, ultimately, not only was that a lesson in authenticity, but it saved me from vocal injury that could have impacted my career. You know, I'm a Shakespeare actor. I'm working on becoming a litigator and litigating in court under supervision even now. And I've sung opera. Like, I don't know if I would have been able to do those things if I had spent another 3 or 4 years until my theater program in college, you know, throwing my voice.
And you just indicated another career in which theater can help you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Anybody who wants to do pre-law, I would say don't major in pre-law, major in theater and focus on Shakespeare, because the close reading that you will do and the empathy that you will build for other people are a huge benefit. But we're not going to get derailed by law student life.
Sorry. No. It was a good example.
It was a fantastic example.
Yes,
it's just that like we spent much of the last episode talking about that.
Yeah,
so
we
we're
did.
going to go back to a different
my
topic.
memory.
Well, not the last episode, but the one before with Beatrice.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Who's in Much Ado About Nothing?
Yes.
Yes, she sure is.
My mug.
Another play.
But another play. Norms. Yeah, we've got other plays. We've got Troilus and Cressida.
Oh yes.
Yes.
So the ancient Greeks were so much more okay with being gay than we are even today. And there's the two characters, Achilles and Patroclus.
Yeah.
That's how you say it. They were never gay in mythology, but in the play, Shakespeare makes them gay.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
And you know what's crazy is when we were preparing for this episode and like coming up with, you know, characters and plays to talk about that represented the LGBTQ plus community, Athanasia told me that they were never actually gay in mythology, that it was Shakespeare who made them gay, and I was like, what? No, because I always knew them as being gay. So like, it just blew my mind.
They were more like Benedict and Claudio in the Iliad. There, I mean, like there's a lot of bromance coded stuff in ancient Greek everything, but Achilles and Patroclus specifically are more like, you know, big brother, little brother. They very much love each other, but
they're cousins, right?
I think they're related somehow, but they love each other very, very dearly. They have a very special relationship, but it's not that. And Shakespeare explicitly makes them gay, which shows that LGBTQ plus representation was specifically important to the person who wrote the plays.
Mm-hmm.
And if that is the man from Stratford, we have reason to believe that he was actually bisexual.
Yeah. But we can cover that whole thing in another episode. But yes, there is reason to believe.
I can't wait.
Yeah, there is reason to believe that man was bisexual.
Yeah.
Well, you know, if you want to dive into the sonnets, like they're a little denser than the plays, but half of them are written to a man and half of them are written to a woman.
Just muddle that through your brains for a little while. Yeah. So another play that shows some representation is As You Like It. And Athanasia has a specific story from when she was in As You Like It, playing Celia.
We're doing all my story times. So As You Like It is kind of similar to Twelfth Night in the sense that Rosalind dresses up as a guy and she tries to be a dating coach to the guy she has a crush on, which is 9 kinds of weird.
Right.
Have you seen the play?
Yes, but many years ago.
Before I get into this, what were your impressions of it?
It's too long ago for me to remember. I just remember I was there.
Okay.
Oh.
I'm sorry.
That's
No,
okay.
that's okay. That's okay.
That's okay.
Yes, I've been there, but I can't remember.
That's okay. We can get these sense impressions from a play and not necessarily care like, what happened. It's an enriching experience.
Mm.
But when I played Celia, who is Rosalind's cousin, the woman playing Rosalind and I decided to make them kissing cousins because they are always talking about how much they love each other and how they sleep in the same bed and they eat together and they dress each other and they play together and work together and do everything together. And yes, that was a thing that people did without being coded romantic if it was a family in the period. But why not explore and push the concept? Especially since Celia watches the relationship between Rosalind and Orlando develop. And I was noticing in the text that Celia gets snarkier and snarkier and much more rude to the other characters and distant from Rosalind.
That's why it's important to really look at the text.
Yes.
We always talk about that.
She gets like more and more rude and snarky the more Rosalind shows interest in Orlando. And so until she gets magically delivered her own heterosexual partner at the end of this Shakespearean comedy. Like,
because it's a comedy.
Yeah, and that's just how it
That is set in Shakespearean times.
Yeah, that's just how the formula works, right? It's literally a rom-com.
Yep.
You know, she's just kind of salty about this relationship. And why would she be if they're just family members who love each other? Like, she wouldn't be that jealous, you don't think. You don't imagine.
Right.
Like, I mean, maybe, but like, that's just a weird take. Anyway, it was very fun, and as Ashley mentions, really, you know, seriously, I can't stress this enough. Pick a character and just go with a fine-tooth comb through their text. You'll find so many things you didn't expect to.
And one person reading the text for one character can find other things because of personal experiences and just, you know, interpret it one way versus another. Like, you know, all 3 of us could prepare the same monologue for the same character and it'll be 3 different monologues.
For sure. For sure.
For Shakespeare specific.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it all depends on where you put the emphasis.
Yeah.
What happens with it,
It does.
Yeah.
Well, I'm also thinking at different times when I've read plays, which I don't do very often anymore, but when I have, I see something different when I come back to it. Or I see somebody else give a performance and suddenly I'm like, wait a minute, I didn't understand that. I mean, that's true for anything in life, but you know, when the language is so, I'd say, unusual relative to our current speech, it's really hard to understand what was the intent, and also to know, am I getting something out of this because I'm ignorant of a time, or I'm ignorant of the language, or am I getting something different out of it because I'm a different person? And maybe I'm a different person now, so I'm seeing something different in what I'm reading than what I would have a few years ago before I had that experience. Maybe I'd be the person really mad at some person, you know, and maybe I'm really mad at them because I want them, not the person, you know, as you say. Who can say?
Who can say?
Because it's not clearly stated in the play.
Right. There's a lot of ambiguity, and even when there are words that we don't understand, like, yes, if you're in a play, you know, we've talked about the lexica, it's important to look things up, like you really should know exactly what you're saying if you're on stage. I harp on my students about this.
Right, so we don't mix things up like a plague of both your houses.
Yes,
Go back and watch the Mercutio episode.
There's so much back homework.
Yes.
I know.
Oh my gosh.
Well, hopefully it's fun and not homework. Hopefully you can just
Right.
like put it on in the
Yeah.
background while you're
Background.
doing your chores and be like,
Yeah.
oh, that's interesting.
I keep
Yeah.
getting distracted when I try to do that. I
Oh.
did fold laundry this morning when I was watching one of yours.
Oh.
And it was, I still could, because you were talking, so it was
Yeah.
language, so I could hear it. It was amazing, but I love seeing you.
Yeah.
Oh,
Back
that's so
back-
sweet. Thank you.
Back to the presentation, Jill.
Yes,
Well, yes.
yeah.
Yes, the one other thing I was going to say is that if you're watching or reading just out loud in your house for pleasure, you don't necessarily need to even care what certain things mean because the sounds are visceral.
Yeah.
Like there's so much expansive use of onomatopoeia
Yes.
Mm.
that you can really get emotionally sucked in by something you have maybe very little clue what it intellectually means.
I was just hit by the concept of blocking and how sometimes when I'm reading something, it helps to get up
Yes.
and walk around, and then an understanding or a feeling about it. I mean, suddenly I'm gesticulating. You see me here, I'm trying to control myself, but you know, there are things that just hit you, and
Yeah.
you get it when
Yeah.
you're walking around and blocking the scene.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's why I do my Get Ready With Me videos is because
Yep.
the movements change the text. So maybe you'll have to do a Get Ready With Me.
Yeah, there you go. You
Okay,
can do one.
I'm having a flashback to when I was in college, and I was in some play, and I had to remember my the word, and I couldn't, and of course I'd wake up in the middle of the night going, I don't know. So I'd get up, it would be dark, and I would walk the scene in my bedroom, and the words would come.
Yeah.
As my body moved, as I remembered the blocking, the words came. These
Yep.
things are our bodies and our voices, which are come out of our bodies, but our movement and our voices are tied so closely together,
Mhm.
and they fuel our emotions, which have to be there in the characters.
Yeah.
Yes. And as we learned in the time period episode,
Yes.
the mind and matter disjunction didn't really come about until a century after Shakespeare with Descartes. When Shakespeare was writing and his audience was watching, you know, or her or there or whatever, we don't know, right?
Right.
Then it was much more widely accepted that yes, the voice is part of the body. The words are located in here and not just talking.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe if they'd had, you know, political news channels, they would have been
Oh.
called like talking bellies or something.
Yeah. But anyway, back to
Oh, yes,
back to, we got derailed a bit, but anyway.
So sorry.
But we were talking about you know, the fluidity of the characters in Shakespeare, and one character that we did see in another character analysis, Ariel from the Tempest,
Yep.
is a very gender fluid character, because I have seen Ariel played by both men and women, and I mean, because Ariel is a spirit, so there is really no gender to a spirit.
right.
You know, it's a mythical creature. It doesn't have a gender. So, a character like Ariel, their gender is irrelevant, and that's very freeing, especially for, well, possibly for, I can't speak because I'm not non-binary, but possibly very freeing for a non-binary performer. Because you don't have to take the gender norms into consideration. You can just be Ariel. Be who you are, or be who they are. Ariel is.
Yeah, and for a woman, you know, there's so, as Palila was saying, there's so much pressure put on women to conform to a certain presentation.
Yeah.
You can jettison that completely if you're playing Ariel.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because there's no restrictions for a character like Ariel. Obviously, you should look at the text, but
Make sure your choices are supported by the text.
by the text. But it's a great character to play, to not have to worry about those constraints. Because even if you're a woman playing a man, or a man playing a woman in Shakespeare, you might still feel like, well, I'm playing a man, so I have to be a certain way and walk a certain way and talk a certain way. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, change your center of
change
gravity.
your,
how you
exactly.
walk and-
But with
yeah.
Ariel, because
you don't even have to move like a human.
right,
Ooh.
exactly. You don't even have to move like a human.
That's interesting. How do I not move like a human when I'm in a human body? acting?
I mean, in my theater program, they made us do a mime exercise where we had to choose an animal, which I'm sure you'd be amazing
Yes, I've done that.
at
I've done
being
that.
a veterinarian.
Yes.
But, you know, that's a little bit beyond the scope.
Okay.
We
so
might want to do
Yeah.
another whole
Derail.
episode
We could do
on
another
that.
episode on
Yeah.
that.
Send in your votes.
Yeah, comment below if there's a theme
Yeah.
that you want us to explore in another episode. We're happy to.
We are happy to. The last play that we're going to talk about is Hamlet. I actually this theory never even crossed my mind, but as I was looking things up for this episode, I found this theory about Horatio actually being in love with Hamlet. And there's a link below to the article where I found this. It's in our description. So if you want to read more the article, the source of where I got it from, you can. I do not remember it off the top of my head, and I'm so sorry, but it is in the description below. But when Hamlet dies, Horatio says, "Now cracks a noble heart. Good night, sweet prince." And, back then, sweet did have a different meaning, but knowing that Shakespeare liked to include representation of the LGBTQ plus community, this could have been like a wink wink kind of a line, like my sweet prince. And the "now cracks a noble heart," I mean, that to me sounds like he's heartbroken, and maybe not just because he lost his best friend. Maybe it's because now his love is dead. And when you read the play, like, it always seems to me like Horatio was really the only person who gave a crap about Hamlet. Like, everybody else just had used him for like their own modus operandi, but Horatio actually really cared and was very concerned.
And
so
Ophelia cared, but like, did she care because she cared about him, or did she care because she felt like she was losing her like
reputation almost
like
too,
her relationship, which could not only mean that she liked him, loved him, whatever. It's not super clear in the play to what extent she loves him, but also, this match with the prince and the approval of her father, and etc.
Right, and as we talk, women back then, you should get married. That's how it was. Yeah. And so, like, she not only was she going to get married, but she was going to marry the prince, which is like a huge thing. And now he's losing his mind, and what is she supposed to do? So is it really because she loved him and cared about him that she's worried? Or is it just like, oh crap, what am I going to do now? Because
exactly. And
I thought I was set, and now he's gone crazy.
And Hamlet has a pretty ambivalent attitude towards Ophelia. He seems to have a lot of affection for her, but is he attracted to her?
Right, we don't know. If you want to recall episode 12, where we have the scene between Athanasia and I doing Hamlet and Horatio, and the two of them are constantly trying to outdo each other with compliments. There's clearly a little bit of a bromance there. I think definitely a little bit of a bromance.
Yeah, my little Celia Hart wants to now do Hamlet.
Right. just to make up,
just to make Horatio
and Hamlet lovers.
Yes.
But I mean, does Hamlet love Horatio? It's possible. I mean, if you go back and look at the text, you can see examples. And like we said, does he love Ophelia?
Maybe he loves both of them.
Maybe he loves both of them. He doesn't have to be just gay. Yeah.
He's pretty indecisive. He could be trying to decide between the two.
He could, yes, he could, because as we've seen in the play itself, he is indecisive about what is he supposed to do with this supposed ghost.
It's his literal
or is it a
tragic
demon?
flaw.
Yeah, exactly. It's indecisiveness. So it falls into his romantic life as well.
Poor Hamlet.
Yeah.
Poor Hamlet.
Poor Hamlet.
Anyway, is there anything else anyone wanted to add?
I was just thinking, as you said, poor Hamlet, you had mentioned at one point that you prefer the comedies to the tragedies.
Oh, yes.
And here we are talking about how, the comedies are formulaic, everybody ends up with some random heterosexual partner. And you know, if you could talk a little bit about why you love the comedies so much, I think that might be awesome.
I guess because tragedy brings me down.
Fair enough.
And so oftentimes in tragedies, people are doing things, they're putting up walls or failing to try to work around a wall. So it's like there's an easy choice, but they don't make that choice. You know, and if you look at something like Romeo and Juliet, and I'm like, you stupid kids. And I thought this when I was a kid, you know, don't be so foolish. And that's what it is. But also, I get really involved in whatever I'm watching. And it sorrows me, you know. I want things to work better. And the comedies, it usually ends happy. And most people get what they want, you know. Some people aren't matched up, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
But
the main characters.
The main characters, and there's humor throughout. Now I know even in tragedies there's some humor that's thrown in, but it's just, my life has had enough trauma. Not that I'm the most traumatized person, but I've had sorrow in my life, and I like to be happy. I want to be Ariel. I want to be Ariel and Ariel, you know?
Yeah.
I love that, and I love the costumes. They're light, fluffy, whatever. They're like this,
Yeah.
you know, and so that's it. I don't know. I should go into tragedies more because there's a lot to learn.
Well, there's no should, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm full of should. I grew up in a should generation. I fought against should, but I still say should.
Well, you know, you make a phenomenal point that there are so many purposes for the theater and Shakespeare in particular in society, and one of them is to just uplift the spirit.
You know, a lot of Shakespeare that I think about is communal. Whether I'm in a play with somebody, which hasn't happened for years, or I'm going to Shakespeare, and I'm going to run off on another small tangent here. This mug is from a Shakespeare festival on the West Coast, and I would go to that. It was like they'd have a, you know, throughout the year they'd have multiple plays. A group of us would go at an outdoor theater, you know. So you're there. You bring things to eat and share. So it's kind of like the Globe, except you're sitting on a hill in California. And it's magical because when it's night, it's really night out. And there was one night when we were watching a tragedy. Did I talk about this already? I can't remember.
I don't think so.
No, it wasn't a tragedy. It was some sort of king, one of the kings, and I can't remember which King Shakespeare play it was.
There's a lot of them.
There was a lot of them, and something traumatic happened, and it was like the character was looking out, and maybe somebody died, or there was mention of a ghost, or there was mention of a wolf or something, and suddenly across the valley, not too far away, but just a little bit across, a coyote started howling or yipping, whatever they do, and it was magical. I mean, like, it fit with the play. It was life, you know.
That's awesome.
And we were sharing it with this group of people sitting outdoors. So
Yeah.
that's to me Shakespeare.
Yes.
Seeing it.
That's
I know
incredible.
people have to act it, so I'd like to act it again, but don't
Yes.
ask me to.
Oh.
And but being in a group of people watching Shakespeare and having all the fun and eating while you do it and chatting and things like, just like they used to
Yeah.
do in Shakespeare's day.
There's so many places
Yeah.
to do that around the world.
Yeah.
When I was in Greece, there's a theater, an ancient theater at Epidavros that is the longest running theater in the world, I believe. It's been running for about 3,000 seasons now.
Wow.
And
Wow.
it's just a huge amphitheater with perfect acoustics. You can hear a pin drop from the back row. But like, if you have a bad back, bring pillows. It's really gnarly, like old stone to sit on. But I saw Richard III there, and they had Greek super titles on screen,
Oh.
which was hilarious. But seeing, you know, the sun actually go down instead of the lights in the theater.
yes.
Oh,
and,
that's so cool.
you know,
That's
yeah,
beautiful.
and the old columns and all this vegetation around. It's
Oh,
very
I
similar.
can see it. I can see it. 3,000 years. That's
Unfortunately, the
incredible.
only wildlife around were cicadas.
Cicadas have their place. I got to know them well not too long ago.
Didn't we all?
Yes.
Well, anything else that we want to add?
I think that I've been enriched by this conversation. I
Yes.
sure hope the audience has too.
I have learned some things researching for this
No, I
episode.
bet you have.
Yeah, and from our guest.
And I've learned a boatload. I mean, I can't even say it. I've learned a boatload.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Palila, for joining
Yes,
us.
thank
Is
you.
there anywhere that people who want to see more of your work can find you?
Well, most of my work nowadays is crossword puzzles.
Okay.
I work in the recycling outside my house. Check back with these two later, and they might be able to fill you in if I actually ever do anything worth your watching.
Yeah, we will definitely let people
Well-
know if you do.
Yes, I can see there's a great comedic talent here. So.
Yes.
Thank you for
Yes,
joining us.
thank you
My
so much
pleasure.
for joining
Thank you.
us.
Thank you.
And we will see you next week. Or next month, not next week. Next time.
Next time.
Next time, where we're going to bring you a special treat. It's going to be the same character, but Athanasia and I will be doing not the same monologue, but two separate monologues of the same character, so you could get a little taste of, two different people's different viewpoints on a character. Make sure you mark that
Wow.
date in your planner.
Because if it's not in your planner, it doesn't exist.
And please remember, if you like our vibe,
There is that button that is called subscribe. And it doesn't rhyme, but happy Pride!
happy Pride!
Pride.